Hello, everyone. I'm Brandon Staglin. Welcome to One Mind Brainwaves. Although I was born in New York City, I call California my home. Over the years, as I've grown up in the state of California, I've had many happy experiences and many harrowing experiences due to my psychotic episodes that I had after my psychotic break during my freshman year of college. But these experiences have grown me into somebody who is deeply concerned and caring about the well-being of the people of our state. And as such, I'm proud to have been able to contribute over the years to the advancement of mental health care policy in this wonderful state. About 3 years ago, I had the opportunity to help the Steinberg Institute research and write and advocate for the passage of a bill that is now providing $20 million for early intervention and care throughout the state of California for young people at risk for serious mental illness. And I'm very proud of this work that I had done then. And I still remember the day that I testified in the state capitol of California in the state Senate alongside mental health legend advocate Daryl Steinberg, who is with us today. And when on that fateful day, I remember my fingertips were very cold and my mouth was dry with nerves, but Daryl's presence and the momentum that I built up as I was testifying helped me to feel more confident. And I believe that our combined testimony helped the process of the near unanimous bipartisan passage of this bill, which is now such a great help to early psychosis intervention in California, helping other young people who experience things like I did when I was younger. So currently, California is a leader and has emerged over the last 2 decades as a leader in advancing mental health policy for mental health research and care. And the goal of these advances are to create a system of care in which mental health is treated with the same sweep and urgency as physical health. With us today are 2 leaders, key architects of California's mental health system. One of them is Sacramento Mayor Daryl Steinberg, who's also the founder of the Steinberg Institute. And the other is Mr. Robert Klein, who is a stem cell research advocate and very prominent success factor in that work. But before we get started with our interviews today, first I want to do 2 things. One is to call out that at the end of the show today, we'll have a mental health app pick of the week from our intrepid One Mind Cyber Guide team, Martha and Stephen. So please stay tuned for that. And then also we have a wonderful returnee to Brainwaves today. That is a California native who has grown up in California, and his songwriting has been influenced by his home state. Back with us today on One Mind Brainwaves is a wonderful musician, Anthony Arya. Anthony, thanks so much for being with us today. Welcome back.
Hello, thanks for having me. Really great to be back again.
Yeah, it's great to see you again. And looking forward to hearing your song. Yeah. But I have a couple of questions for you first. So the first question is, California has had a long and storied history in music. What do you think it is about the state of California that inspires so many musicians in their songwriting?
Yeah, I think music and musicians have been inspired by California because I think music in a lot of ways is a reflection of culture. And California has had such an immense influence on culture. And if you think, throughout history, from the gold rush in 1848 to following the Dust Bowl when so many moved out to California, it's always been, I think California has been this beacon of hope and progress and really embracing everyone in that progress. And so I think that's why it's really been a big part of music, because it's been a big part of culture. I think the Mamas and Papas summed it up pretty well with California Dreamin' on such a winter's day. They wrote that in New York City, dreaming of California in the 60s, where there was a lot of musicians moving out to particularly Los Angeles, Laurel Canyon, but really throughout history, California has played such a big part for music because it's been such a big part of culture in general.
Yeah, no, California is a wonderful state. And I still remember a story that my late grandmother used to tell when she was younger and alive. She would say that when she first moved to California from the Midwest, in her case, from Nebraska, she'd tell people that when she first got here, she told her husband Ray on the phone, who was still back in Nebraska waiting to move here to join her, that, hey, Ray, when I got off the train here to California, I said, wait a minute, this isn't California, this is paradise, because she really loved it so much here. And I'm with you on that. It's a wonderful state.
Oh yeah, I was born in San Francisco and grew up in the Bay Area, so I love California too. Yeah.
Great. Well, you've got this great song, Going to California, off your album of the same name, and you're going to perform that for us today. Can you tell us a bit about this great song?
Yeah, well, I wrote it about following. I was reading a lot of stories about Route 66 and all the people that traveled along the journey from Chicago or somewhere along the way, ending up in California. And then later, when I was deciding in 2018 what I should make the title track of my first album, I was down in LA for NBC's The Voice for season 15, and I realized there that it was the same situation, but just a little bit later in history. That all these musicians were coming down to California from across the country to follow their dreams. And so I was thinking about that when it carries through history from what I was talking about from Route 66 and all those stories till now. So that's why I decided to make it a title track.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's so evocative and so much history in the song. And I'd love to hear the song. Can you play it for us, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Well, I'm going on a trip, gonna find out what I missed. Like what to do and where to start, I'm gonna show 'em what I forgot. And I said, hey, 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 hey. Well, maybe I'm stargazing, wondering what to do. Maybe I'm thinking that we all turn blue. Well, I'm going to California, or I'll go to Arizona, there I'll know. Well, if the grass is really greener on the dark side of the moon. And I said, hey, 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 hey. My mama always told me, be careful what you do. The world is gonna bite you if you don't bite too. Well, I thought about it a little more tonight. I think it's funny how you think the world is fighting with you. Well, I sat by the fire and I wondered what it's doing to me. I said, hey, wait a minute, little lady, it's fighting for me. And I said, hey, 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 hey. And I said, hey, hey, hey. Well, I'm going to California, or I'll go to Arizona, there I'll know. If the grass is really greener on the dark side of the moon. And I said, hey, hey, hey,
Thank you, Anthony. God, what a beautiful healing song to hear on this day.
Thank you so
And
much.
you just make me feel so good to hear that song. It gives me hope for the future, a brighter day in California and beyond.
Yes. Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Anthony, and take care. We'll love to have you back someday on Brainwaves again.
Absolutely. I'd love to. Yeah.
All right. Peace be with you. Take care. All right. So in 2004, California's voters passed the landmark Mental Health Services Act, which is providing over $2 billion a year to help people at risk for or experiencing serious mental health issues. In 2017, One Mind joined the Steinberg Institute, as I talked before, and UC Davis to pass a bill which is now providing additional funds and oversight and accountability for young people at risk for serious mental health issues and their care. Here to discuss California's mental health policy and these successes, of which he was a key architect of both, is the leader of the Steinberg Institute and the mayor of Sacramento, Daryl Steinberg. Daryl, thank you so much for being with us on Brainwaves today.
Oh, Brandon, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be with you. You're an inspiration, and the work you and your family do has advanced our cause in so many ways. It's an honor.
Oh, thank you, Daryl. Yeah, it's an honor to be with you too. And you've been somebody I've really deeply admired over so many years. So it's wonderful to have you with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, and viewers, don't forget, you can ask questions of Daryl or any of our guests at any time during this webcast. So, Daryl, you've referred to mental health as the unattended issue of our time. And you've worked extremely hard throughout your career to help make mental health a top priority for the state of California. What drives you to make mental health such an important cause, and why is it so important to you?
Well, there's a long history here, and the truth of the matter is I was not inspired to get engaged in the issue area for any personal reason. I had some formative experiences both as an undergraduate at UC Berkeley and as a law student at UC Davis, where I became friends with a number of students with physical disabilities. And I saw what they did in order to graduate college and law school. In law school, without even the physical ability to turn the page of a heavy case book. And I was just so impressed and awed by what I called their normalcy, and understood from a very early age that the flip side of disability is ability. And when I became a young elected official, a city council member, homelessness, which still remains a major challenge and problem in our state and in our society, was big then too. And I recognized back in 1998 that the state of California, like the country, made a promise back in the 1960s. We shut state mental hospitals, and we made a promise that we would essentially transfer the money that was being spent on institutional care and transfer it to the community so that people with brain-based illnesses could live as independently as possible with the support they needed to live in the community and to live, yes, normal lives. And it was a promise that for many decades, and to some degree still, has been a promise unfulfilled. And so I decided when I ran for the assembly in 1998 that I was going to run on a platform of improving the mental health system. And I won. And I just started on this journey where we invested, fought for resources for what we call integrated services for the homeless, mentally ill. And it was such a success in the late 90s, early 2000s that the late Rusty Seelix and I, who led the Community Council of Mental Health Agencies, the providers, and I decided to write an initiative and to put it before the voters of California. In 2004, we passed Proposition 63, as you said, and it does generate $2.4 billion a year now for services, for prevention, early intervention, for a whole wide range of help for people. And I take great pride in it, but I'm just happy that there is an ongoing source of money to help people who deserve it and people in need.
Absolutely. That's so important. And I'm glad California is prioritizing this thanks to the great work that you have done to promote this through the Mental Health Services Act and so many other things. So can you talk a little bit about the Mental Health Services Act's innovative funding mechanism and the successes it's had with that funding mechanism so far?
Yes, we decided that we didn't want to just provide a funding stream, although funding is important, but we wanted to at least suggest how the system ought to be built, as if we were doing it from the beginning, understanding that there were existing sources of funding and a variety of different programs. What we said with the Mental Health Services Act is that every year, at least 20% of the money needs to be spent on prevention and early intervention. 5% on top of that for innovation, and then 75% for comprehensive services with a focus on what is known in the field, as you know, as wraparound, whatever it takes, without saying the money can't be used for whatever it takes, so long as somebody qualifies because they live with a serious mental illness and they're at risk. The Mental Health Services Act will help provide the funding. And so the result has been a number of signature prevention and early intervention initiatives throughout the state, including early psychosis identification and intervention for young people, for teenagers, which I know you have championed as well. And our subsequent bill provided a unique way to raise private dollars to match public resources to be able to do more in that area. But the idea is to focus as much on prevention, early intervention as possible. And, you know, Rusty, who was a great leader who died from ALS just a couple of years ago, we always remember him and his contribution. He was fond of saying, you know, when we know we will really have made it, when we reverse the numbers, when we spend 80% of the money on prevention and early intervention because we don't need more than 20% for back end because fewer people are suffering the life-altering consequences of not getting the help they need and the help they need early. Mm-hmm. And so we've got a lot of work to do. Proud of the work, but this is a lifelong this is lifetime work because the system still is not nearly as responsive enough to people as it needs to be.
Yeah, and thank you, Daryl, for all your work in this area. And you know, you founded the Steinberg Institute to multiply your ability to influence the mental health system in 2015 as a public policy leadership and advancement institute. And you did this to promote outside the box thinking like the Mental Health Services Act. Some of the Steinberg Institute's successes so far have included that bill we just talked about to provide funding and oversight and new mechanisms for treatment for young people at risk for serious mental illness. But there have been many other successes of the Steinberg Institute in advancing public policy. Can you talk a bit about some of these, please, and how they work?
Sure. I think it's important first I just touch on what the motivation for establishing the Institute was in the first place. And, you know, it's humbly in my name, but the work is being put forward by so many great people, led by Maggie Merritt, who is the executive director of our institute. The idea, I left the legislature in 2014 because of term limits. I was president of the Senate, but there are constitutional term limits. And so in 2014, I left and I can't ever go back. It's a lifetime limit. And the very last act for me as a legislator in November of 2014 was to write a letter to all of the incoming members and all the returning members to say that I'm proud of the work that I was able to participate in with regard to improving mental health in the mental health system. I said, but one person should not be the identified leader. We all need to be leaders. And so I wrote them asking that every one of them introduce at least one bill during their tenure to improve the system. And I thought, what role can I play? And I thought, even though I won't be a legislator, I could establish an advocacy institute that would be the force, if you will, from the outside for the changes that need to be made. There are a lot of great mental health advocacy organizations, including One Mind, by the way, and a lot of stakeholders. I wanted to set up an advocacy institute that was not looking for a funding stream or was not, but was all about asking the hard questions and insisting that the system itself be better. And so we established this 6-year anniversary as of January the 5th, yesterday, as we talk today on the 6th of January. And it has been a tremendous success. We led the effort to sponsor and create the No Place Like Home Act, the $2 billion bond out of Prop 63 for permanent supportive housing for people homeless and living with severe mental illness, $2 billion. We worked with you, of course, on early psychosis identification and intervention this year. We were the co-sponsors, along with the Kennedy Forum, on the most significant change to the parity law, requiring insurance companies to cover now eating disorders and substance abuse, and to not be able to arbitrarily deny claims when people who are covered need and deserve mental health care. And every year we have been on the cutting edge of something. And it's very exciting. And we're going to continue this work. Again, I am the founder, and I still, help everywhere and every time that I can. And I'm involved. But what I really love about it is that it's well beyond me, that it has formed its own identity, and that they're in the halls of the Capitol, well, not physically right now because of COVID, but in the halls of the Capitol, working on behalf of people who too often don't have a voice.
That's awesome. And congratulations on being the momentum behind the start of this movement through the Steinberg Institute is perpetuating to help people with mental health challenges in California. That's phenomenal. And, the Steinberg Institute is an example of an institute that is in California that I think other states could emulate. And I think the whole California mental health system is something that other states could potentially look to for ideas on innovative ways to help people with mental health challenges. How can California serve as a model, and how can other states learn from what California's innovations have done?
Well, not every state I know has an initiative process. And, we went to the ballot because we felt that for many years, for a variety of reasons, stigma, really, that the issues of mental health never rose to the top tier of the public policy agenda. Under Governor Gavin Newsom, by the way, it finally has. I mean, he devoted a good part of the State of the State address in 2020, before the pandemic, to improving the mental health system, to his credit. I think that with or without an initiative system, that we need more people who get elected to office, who are willing to make these sets of issues their priority. And what politicians, I'll talk about them because I'm one of them, don't often realize is that there is a huge constituency out there. There is. People think, well, working on mental health, nobody really cares. It doesn't get you, further in politics. I became president of the Senate in California with this as my signature issue. And I'm not saying it was because it was my signature issue, but it certainly didn't hurt me. And there's a huge constituency out there. And what we need are more leaders, elected leaders, to say that that fixing the mental health system, and as you said in your introduction, making mental health equal to physical health in terms of the attention and the resources, is my priority, and we can do it. As I like to say, we need to make the mental health system, which is now what we call a stage 4 system. You get help if you fall through the cracks, generalizing a little bit, but it's hard to get help unless you really suffer. We need to go from stage 4 to stage 1 and stage 2, just like we did with cancer. And that's going to require political attention. And I think with that kind of attention and focus, that nationally and in other states, we can accomplish a lot.
Absolutely. Thank you. And hopefully other states will follow California's lead and have leaders like Governor Gavin Newsom and like you have been to advance the cause of mental health in those states as well. So finally, the new year is finally upon us, and 2021 hopefully will be a better year going forward. What gives you hope for the mental health care system in California and beyond in 2021?
I see the great strides that we have made as a state, and even some strides as a country over the past 20 years. When I started in this area, very few people were talking about it. Very few legislators introduced bills. Now, what I asked in 2014 is actually coming true. There are hundreds of bills introduced now every year in the legislature. So I have hope that where there is focus, where there is leadership, where there is vision, that we can make 2021 a great year. And by the way, it's important to mention that in this terrible pandemic, COVID, that mental health, of course, has emerged as a major consequence of COVID-19, untreated mental health. If COVID is the pandemic, mental health is the epidemic. And I think there's an opportunity here in this very tough time to say, look, a lot of people are hurting economically. A lot of people are hurting physically, obviously. God, we've lost so many people due to COVID, but that a lot of people are suffering emotionally as well. And that mental health now needs to get more attention because people need somebody to talk to, and many people need professional help as well. So let's get at it.
Absolutely. And if you have any questions for Mayor Steinberg or for our other guest who's about to come on, Mr. Robert Klein, feel free to ask these at any time. Daryl, thank you so much for being with us on Brainwaves today. You've been an inspiration to so many, including me. So,
Brandon, thank you. And say hello to Bob Klein for me, who's another hero of the movement, with all the work he's done, and your parents, of course, on research and finding cures. Why not? We found cures for so many other things. We can understand the brain better, and Bob and you and your whole family are leading the way. Great to be with you.
You too. In November, California voters passed a ballot measure known as Proposition 14. This measure is providing a taxpayer-supported boost to stem cell research, the state stem cell research agency, and $1.5 billion of this boost is going to support brain health research to develop new, better therapies for treatment for conditions like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and dementia. Now, with us today, we're very lucky to have the leader of the Yes on Proposition 14 campaign, Mr. Robert Klein. Bob Klein is the founder and chairman of Americans for Cures, as well as the former board chairman of the California Institute for Regenerative Medicine, or CIRM, C-A-R-M. Bob, thank you so much for being with us on Brainwaves today.
Brandon, it's a privilege. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Absolutely. Yeah. So glad to have you today. And congratulations on the passage of Proposition 14. It wasn't that long ago. Well done.
Well, it's the vision of California's voters who we should be thanking, because in the middle of a pandemic, they saw that science is really key to our future health and the economy of our country as well. So they voted for $5.5 billion based upon that vision.
Fantastic. I'm so glad to know this. And What does the passage of Proposition 14 mean for the people of California and for the research on brain health and other conditions being done by the CIRM, the California Institute for Regenerative Medicine?
So the passage of the general obligation bonds will fund $5.5 billion for California scientists and physicians, some 7,000 that have been involved in stem cell and genetic research and therapy development, provides the ability to bring forward the potential therapies from over 3,000 peer-reviewed published medical discoveries that have occurred from the initial funding of this program in 2004. It means that the 90 patient trials, clinical trials that are in progress can advance further, hopefully bringing new therapies to patients. And specifically in the area of the brain, $1.5 billion is set aside for the area of brain health, whether it's schizophrenia or dementia or Parkinson's or Alzheimer's, to move that very complicated area into advanced discovery candidates for therapies and then to human trials. So there's a huge potential here to move the needle in the development of candidates for therapies and actually going through the human trials for these therapies to serve the area of brain health. It's a phenomenal opportunity in a period of medical revolution focused around stem cells and genetic therapies.
That's awesome. So it'll bring some of these stem cell technologies to bear, continue to do this to enable some of the discoveries made over the last 16 years that have been funded by a similar proposition back in 2004 to actually get to patients in hopefully the near term and help them with their challenges. Is that right?
Yeah, it's absolutely. For example, in the first initiative in 2004, which actually wasn't able to start funding until about 2007 because of ideological motivated court actions trying to block the will of California's voters. But from 2007 to 2020 in the area of Parkinson's, one of the great discoveries was the ability to take a skin cell from a Parkinson's patient that had their genetic code and convert that into actual tissue embedded with that genetic code and create an active model of Parkinson's in human tissue against which they could test new therapies. So the ability to really reproduce tissue that reflects chronic disease or injury or genetic conditions, rather than trying to do it in an animal, which is leaves a great gap between the human condition and the animal condition, to get into a human model of Parkinson's, just as it will be for schizophrenia and Alzheimer's and dementia, a massive jump forward for California, but really for the world, because the research being done in California represents some of the leading research for the world. As a nation, California is ranked number 2 in the world in biomedical research capacity, behind only the United States.
That's amazing. That's awesome. I'm glad there's so many great resources in California that this proposition can take advantage of to help people. So you talked about this impacting people around the world. So the Healthy Brains Global Initiative, or HBGI, which has been incubated, it's a international research consortium incubated by OneMind and the National Academy of Medicine, is planning to submit a proposal to the California Institute for Regenerative Medicine, which is the institute created by Proposition 4, supported by Proposition 14. It's doing the stem cell research. So to collaborate to help bring these discoveries to people around the world in an accelerated way. If this took place, this collaboration successfully formed, how would that help patients around the world with new therapies being developed in California?
Well, California represents a major asset base of researchers and facilities. At this point, there's about $10 billion invested either by the private sector or the state in this collaboration that grew out of Proposition 71, the 2004 initiative. So that's a foundation that's available to collaborate with the global initiative. I know your father, Garen Staglin, and Victor Zhao, the president of the National Academy of Medicine, have really brought together countries all across the world into this consortium. And it is vital that in our dedication to serving patients, that we not duplicate the research from one area, but rather we synergistically complement the research from every area and bring those resources together. So what the Healthy Brain Initiative is doing globally is a phenomenal resource that California could collaborate with in really blending the knowledge from across the globe and advancing therapies and therapy candidates, whether it's basic research or all the way to human trials, in a collaboration with California's resources. So the California citizens would gain, global citizens would gain. It would be a phenomenal accelerator, which clearly we desperately need. The cost of the pandemic, people understand at this point, in the trillions of dollars, but just California's cost for chronic disease and injury, which includes a huge component dealing with the brain, has been projected to be $4.7 trillion over a period of 15 years, or $300 billion a year. So I'm a patient advocate. As you know, my son had type 1 diabetes. But while I'm dedicated, and the patient advocate organizations, including One Mind, are dedicated ultimately to the patients, we need to also understand that there are trillions of dollars of cost every year in chronic disease and injury. And by bringing the world's best minds together, which the Global Initiative for Healthy Minds is doing, with the resources in California, we have the opportunity to save literally trillions of dollars, but while honoring our first mission, which is to enhance and restore patient health.
That's awesome. So it's a win-win-win. It's a win for patients. It's a win for patients elsewhere outside of California, and it's a win for the economy of California and the rest of the world. I can't wait to see that happen. So glad you're involved in this. You also spearheaded, as you mentioned, the campaign for Proposition 71, the California Stem Cell Research and Cures Act, which passed, as you said, in 2004. You've talked about some of the great benefits of stem cell research. What initially inspired you to get involved in stem cell research advocacy?
Well, as I alluded to just a little earlier, my youngest son at age 11 was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, which is a form of diabetes where the immune system destroys part of the pancreas in the body that is necessary to metabolize food, so that the patient is constantly trying to balance blood sugars to stay alive. And the patient has many different precipitous events that can lead to death unexpectedly in the middle of the night, during the day, because the blood sugars unpredictably get out of balance. So understanding the suffering my son was going through, I felt that really the hope for my family and every family was to call to the attention of the society an opportunity where more could be invested in medical science and therapy development in California, built on its huge infrastructure that was in place to benefit California and the world, and possibly cure type 1 diabetes. Now, through the work that has occurred over the last 16 years, type 1 diabetes is now in phase 2 human trials, about to go into phase 3 human trials, just the last stage before it becomes available to the public. Paralysis is going into phase 3 human trials with dramatic videos that are available showing that a quadriplegic young man who was totally paralyzed from a car accident, within 6 months after a stem cell therapy, you can see him lifting weights and restoring a lot of his upper body function and his ability to interrelate with family and become a productive, contributing member of society again. You can see videos of individuals who were blind for a decade, who can now read their own handwriting again, with their sight restored by repairing the retina with stem cells. And during the most recent campaign to renew this funding, we had videos of cancer patients where they had exhausted every therapy. All the therapies were failing for a specific form of leukemia. They were on their way to a death sentence, and they are now fully restored and participating in the society in full remission on the cancer. So stem cells and genetic therapies, through the original initiative that I was motivated to back, in fact, to author and then chair, started with type 1 diabetes, but I want to emphasize that the board has 14 different patient advocates on it, along with 15 different scientific representatives. So the broad spectrum of chronic disease and injury are represented there, and represented by individuals and family members who have suffered through these conditions and are dedicated to the patient, number one, through advancing science.
That's amazing. What a powerhouse group you have there of patient advocates that are representing the interests of broader patient communities. And congratulations to you on the success that Proposition 71 and 14 have had to transform the lives of so many people. I mean, it's just awe-inspiring to hear these stories you're telling about, the great changes that have taken place in people's lives. You must feel pretty good about that, I imagine.
Well, I feel privileged to support this great science. My youngest son didn't survive long enough to benefit, but it is gratifying and redemptive in many ways to see all of these other families benefit. And my mother died with Alzheimer's, which is a very difficult struggle for an individual, losing all of their knowledge of their family, their friends, and what they accomplished in their life. So I'm hopeful that in the new initiative, the $1.5 billion set aside for conditions of the brain and brain health, which includes Alzheimer's, will see tremendous progress, just as many other areas have already.
I certainly hope so, for the sake of so many people who struggle with those conditions. And I'm sorry to hear about the challenges your families face, but you face them with incredible resilience and an inspiring determination to change things for others. So thank you very much. Speaking of advocacy, the federal government has often restricted stem cell research. But so what do you say to critics of Proposition 14 who say things like the federal government may be easing those restrictions, so why do we need state funding to support stem cell research when we could instead rely on federal and private funding? So unfortunately, a minority
of representatives in the House of Representatives or in the U.S. Senate can, through manipulating the rules of either of those legislative bodies, create riders on bills that prevent the advancement of medical research in ways that conflict with their personal ideology. There's something called the Dickey-Wicker Amendment that for years has stopped certain types of stem cell research using embryonic stem cells that were excess cells that would have been thrown away after in vitro fertilization procedures were completed by families who wanted to dedicate their extra cells on the hope that their family and other families wouldn't suffer the same kind of chronic diseases that their ancestors had. So just in this last 4 months, there's 22 members of the U.S. Senate and 78 members of the House of Representatives who wrote to President Trump advocating that he should outlaw embryonic stem cell research and fetal stem cell research and therapies, despite the fact that fetal stem cell research was used in testing the very therapies that saved President Trump from COVID-19. So the irony is that despite the pandemic and despite understanding how critical it is for science not to be suppressed and for scientific research to advance to deal with infectious diseases like COVID-19, which the California Stem Cell Research Agency is funding, as well as other chronic diseases and injuries. There are these members of both parties who will have declared that they are prepared to try and use appropriation bills, for example, in the Senate, that require a 60% approval vote. So no one party can pass them. And so if individuals of a particular party decide that they ideologically don't like this, they can trade off with the head of the Senate and say, we're only going to vote for your budget if, in fact, you put a rider on here that stops this research. Today, in the 21st century, we have a condition where the National Institutes of Health, the funder for the federal government for research and clinical trials, is not funding clinical trials using embryonic stem cells or fetal stem cells because of this ideological suppression. Those are those embryonic and fetal stem cells, respectively, are the very therapy sources that appear on path to provide a therapeutic effective cure for type 1 diabetes, for paralysis, for blindness. So while we have the opportunity of extraordinary change, at the very same time, there's those individuals in the federal government, in the House and the US Senate, who would suppress the very science that we need to get these therapies in human trials with strong preliminary proof of concept through to phase 3 trials and to patients. It is an extraordinary moment, because I personally say to these individuals, whether they're senators or House members, if it were your family, would you stop these therapies? Would you leave a young man paralyzed for life? Would you leave a mother who has a genetic form of blindness, who hasn't seen her children for a decade, blind for the rest of her life? How would you make the choice if it was your family? Please respect the fact that I will respect your religion, but respect me as a parent and every family and those parents and spouses, and give them the right to choose the best therapy for their family.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, there are individuals that in the government, in the Congress, who are so ideologically fixed, they will not give another family the respect to let that family follow their doctor's advice.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that science can't progress in ways that can help so many people, as you've talked about previously with the advances and they're changing people's lives and helping them to function again as human beings and enjoy the company of their families and be citizens that contribute productively to their communities. I mean, I hope that science gets more attention and more respect as we move forward in time.
Absolutely. And what's critical to understand is that through this Proposition 71 and this new Proposition 14 that just passed with the 5.5 billion, California is the only source in the United States of government funding for therapies derived from human embryonic stem cells or fetal stem cells. The only source of governmental funding in the United States. So this is a remarkably important role, and hopefully in collaboration with the Healthy Brain, the Global Healthy Brain Initiative, we can create a global partnership if the board of the agency sees the same logic that you and I can see, and that is strictly their decision. But we have an opportunity here with California's special powers and with this new funding for a collaboration that could have revolutionary changes, pulling together the knowledge globally.
That's awesome. That gives me a lot of hope to know that. And Bob, I want to ask you finally, after the year we've seen and all these challenges that have taken place, both in society and in government and in so many facets of our lives, including the pandemic, what gives you hope for 2021?
What gives me hope for 2021? The individual patient successes and the published breakthroughs of the last 16 years have been extraordinary. In 2004, when I wrote that initiative and chaired it, I didn't have an expectation that the young woman that I referred to earlier, who gave birth to twins and hadn't seen them for a decade, would have her sight restored. I mean, that's an amazing thing to happen. Blind for a decade, and now she can read her own handwriting. I didn't understand or expect that the young man I referred to, who was totally paralyzed, his parents were spoon feeding him to keep him alive, that 6 months after a single infusion of 10 million stem cells at the point of injury in his spine, that he could be lifting weights again. I mean, these are very difficult to even contemplate. And seeing these successes in the past, seeing the cancer patient who had exhausted every therapy and is now fully restored and now married and carrying on a tremendously productive life. These are inspirational, and because they spread across 90 human clinical trials, all FDA approved, across a spectrum of new therapies, and knowing that there's a dozen more that were just waiting to go into human trials based upon the passage of this new initiative.
Wow.
My faith in the scientific community and the ability to really change the future of human suffering is elevated far beyond what I thought was possible in that kind of a time frame in 2004.
Fantastic. Very well said, Bob. Thanks so much for inspiring me and our whole audience here today. Really appreciate all the advocacy you brought to bear to improve lives, both for mental health and physical health conditions in California and far beyond. Bob, thank you so much for being with us on Brainwave today and for all your amazing advocacy. And viewers, thank you too. Thanks for watching Brainwave today and being with us. I want to remind you that you can anytime go to onemind.org/brainwaves to view this and other episodes that we've filmed in the past, all across Brainwaves history. And you can also ask questions there as follow-ups. And if any of the information that Bob or Mayor Steinberg have shared today on our webcast has benefited you and you think it benefited others, please share this webcast with them. And finally, before we go, I want to take a moment to bring in the One Mind Cyber Guide team. We're going to tell you a bit about some of the latest mental health apps that can benefit your mental health going forward into 2021. Martha and Stephen, please take it away.
Hi there. I'm Anthony Arya, and I'm the project manager of One Mind Cyber Guide.
You probably already use your phone for many things throughout the day. But did you know that there are lots of apps out there to help you manage your mental health and well-being? There are thousands of mental health apps available for download today. With so many to choose from, it can be hard to separate the good from the bad. That's where One Mind Cyber Guide can help. At One Mind Cyber Guide, we review apps on 3 different metrics: credibility, user experience, and transparency. We've reviewed over 200 products, and all of these reviews are available for free on our app guide at onemindcyberguide.org.
Hi, I'm Stephen Schuler, and I'm the Executive Director of One Mind Cyber Guide. I'm a clinical psychologist and mental health service researcher, and my research focuses on the use of technology to increase access to mental health care. The work we do at One Mind Cyber Guide is important because there's a need for objective, third-party reviews of mental health apps and rigorous evaluation of their evidence base. In the coming year, we'll be featuring apps here on Brainwaves, which may be helpful for viewers. We'd like to start with one of our favorite apps, Wobot.
Wobot is a chatbot app. This means that it mimics a conversation with a human, but it's actually a software program. Wobot starts by getting to know you and how you're feeling, and invites you to talk through what's going on for you. You can set reminders to check in with Wobot every day. You can set up an account and build on your previous conversations, or you can use the app anonymously. Each check-in takes just a couple of minutes, so Wobot is really something that can be incorporated into your daily life and can be used quickly and discreetly. Throughout your conversations and check-ins, Wobot suggests different activities which may help you feel better, such as gratitude journaling. Wobot uses the principles of cognitive behavioral therapy, which is the gold standard treatment for managing anxiety. We've reviewed Wobot at One Mind Cyber Guide, and it scores highly on our credibility scale, scoring 4.67 out of 5, and on our user experience scale, scoring 4.45 out of 5. It also has acceptable transparency around data security and privacy. You can learn more about Wobot by visiting the review page at this link.
We look forward to sharing more app reviews with you next week.
Okay, and we're back. Thanks so much, Martha and Stephen, for your great exposition of mental health apps. Happy New Year, everyone. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, viewers.
Thank you, Brandon. And thank you for what One Mind does for all of us in California and across the globe.
You're very welcome. So glad to partner and work with folks like you. Thank you, Bob. Everyone, see you next week. Thanks so much. Take care.
Mental health is stepping out of the shadows and into the spotlight.
I think I need help.
Can you talk?
Struggling.
I'm here.
Depressed. Can't sleep.
But we need the science and solutions to change lives. Now, more than ever, we are in this fight together. We are of one mind, accelerating brain health for all. Help us fund new treatments at onemind.org.